particular, I was approached by George in the middle of 2005, and we had a number of starts and stops, and they were all my fault. I was on sabbatical, and when you're on sabbatical, you basically lose your calendar, and it's difficult to set a date to appear somewhere. And George was wonderfully persistent, and I'm so happy to finally make it to Charlottesville in the Miller Center. I've been wanting to come here for many years, the first of which, for many reasons, the first of which is I've felt fraudulent as a historian until yesterday because I had never been to Monticello. And we had a debate at my college a few years ago, not a debate exactly, it was about early American gardens and the gardens at Mount Vernon, and were they nicer than the gardens at Monticello. And there are a lot of senior citizens in the community I live in, Chestertown. So actually it was a debate. Passions were running high, and someone asked me what I thought, and I had to say I haven't been to Monticello, and a gasp came out of the audience, and finally I made it yesterday. And I'm also happy to be at the Miller Center because I was involved at the end of the Clinton administration with a negotiation about what to do with the Clinton Oral History Project and which university ought to undertake the great enterprise of talking to people in the Clinton administration about what it was like to serve with him and what policies were enacted. And the Miller Center was ultimately chosen, and I've been a close follower of its activities since then. And it's just a remarkably impressive place. It's doing something that no other center is doing out there. And I mean, there are obviously presidential libraries that are very important, but no place unites the study of the different presidents as well as this one. It's becoming the Valhalla of the presidents, and I'm so happy to be here as a student of the recent presidency, and as George said, as someone who has looked into the 19th century and into the 18th century. And I think you can make a decent argument, we could perhaps talk about this in question and answer period, that the institution of the presidency itself is very much a Virginian legacy to the United States. There have been only 42 presidents. I'm going to talk today about number 8. Most people would not put him at the top of any category of achievement. I'm very impressed to see so many people in the audience, and I was astonished to be the subject of a radio interview with a Charlottesville station this morning. So I'd like to begin by saying you people are obviously not normal in your devotion to American history. But Martin Van Buren was important. He was important for many reasons I think I knew before I started this project, and quite a few that I did not know. If, as loyal Charlottesville citizens, you suspect that he might have had something to do with your most famous resident, you're absolutely right. I think he's a very important disciple of Thomas Jefferson, who does quite a lot to translate Jeffersonian ideas into a more serviceable idiom for the middle decades of the 19th century and beyond. Why did I undertake a biography of a, let's face it, a pretty obscure American president? I did it, I think, for a reason Martin Van Buren would have appreciated very well. It was a political favor, which is not to say I wasn't interested. I was. I was leaving the Clinton White House, and my own life was in some disarray. It's a strange thing to exit a White House. It's a great lesson in democracy, because suddenly there are no cars to take you anywhere. No reservations exist when you show up at the restaurant. And I didn't know what to work on next. I'd been a speechwriter for years and years, and I felt like I should be writing something, but there were no speeches to give. And the great historian Arthur Schlesinger Jr. called me, and I knew him slightly, and he was starting a series of general biographies of the presidents, and he needed someone to do Van Buren. And I was flattered. Arthur is, of course, one of the most eminent historians of the 20th century. But I was also flattered because Van Buren is important to Arthur. If any of you have read his great work, The Age of Jackson, which it's hard to believe it came out 61 years ago. It came out in 1945. But still, I think the definitive book on that period, and that is, I think, one of the definitive shaping periods of American history. And Van Buren plays a large role in that book. So I felt like, in spite of the obscurity of Van Buren, I was getting an important assignment from a great historian.